Hello and welcome to this Glasgow City Council Technical Teachers Pencil Rendering 2 session. Now this one's a long one, it's about 20 minutes long. I'd put the kettle on if I were you. We're working predominantly with three colours. In the first video we went over how to the basics of rendering the suggestion of a wood grain. In that case we're using brown, orange and yellow. Now we're going to moving on to maybe giving a little bit of variety where you can add stains or colour washes to material and still retain some of the grain aesthetic coming through the material, but by putting a stain or a colour wash on it, we have a colour or blend of colours that we can apply that are other than the brown, orange and yellow. Because this demonstration is going to take a while, sections of it have been speeded up, and I think you should be able to notice the difference in the speed. But we're going to put the angular rings in first. That's those growth rings. Straight up the side or wandering up the side of the material, distance apart depending on how fast growing the material is, but using complementary colours. In this case we're using a blue and a sort of dark teal green, just the colours that are available, and we'll maybe look at colours, complementary colours to go with that. So the same idea, we start off with the growth ring, then we blend that material using the side of the tip of the pencil to bring it across, and then we're going over the same area and a little bit further, so closing that white gap with, in this case, the green pencil. In the previous ones we've done that with the orange and it warmed it up. This definitely doesn't warm it up, but it certainly spreads that blend of blue and green together. So blue and green going on, there's a few areas of white I might want to touch up around about the side. And then we're going to put a lighter green on top of that just to take the white away. We don't want to leave it stripy, but we don't want to leave it hard either. So just inside of the tip of the pencil, and it's going over the area, gradually filling it up, looking for areas where you think definitely a bottom edge needs done, for example. And for this object, because it's balanced on a corner with the curves as shown there, we're putting a green line down the inside. We mentioned that maybe in the previous demonstration. If you add one of the colours, one of the darker colours to the edge, you reinforce the edge and you minimise the effect of strike through with your pencils going over the edge of the material. Okay, so that's that one done. There will be an overhang. This piece of bent acrylic that's coming through the edge there would be sticking further than towards us, the wood, so we're putting a slight shadow underneath there, and it's those shadows that make a big difference really early on when the kids are sketching like this, because you can give the impression of 3D with just a touch of shade or tone. So I've quickly popped on a contrasting to the blue with the orange there, and in Scotland it's very easy to think of why those two colours contrast each other. Anyone who's picked up a can of Irn-Bru, kids get the opposite of blue very, very quickly. In this case, just adding a little bit of darkness to the edge, but I might actually make the acrylic look as if it's bending or curving in an arc shape towards the object. So a little bit of darkness on the edge of that one as well. Okay, moving along, let's just see, maybe not with so many colours this time, rather than just using a lot of colours, just try and work with maybe one or two. In this case, we'll put those growth lines in again. We're going to speed it up a lot in this case. We're going to use the side of the tip of the pencil. That will fly on again much faster than we would expect you to demonstrate, but it saves time for the 19 or so minutes we have for this particular short video. And then maybe a wee touch of something very close to the original, maybe a slight pink redness on top. Now this material looks fairly flat at the moment. I know there's an angular cut at the top and there's a curved cut at the bottom, and it looks like there's a piece of bent aluminium rod, because that's what it says in the drawing, coming in this side, and it might be a sphere or a cylinder at the bottom of that. We can give a good impression of those three-dimensional forms through the use of colour and tone. Just go around the outside of the object, or the inside of the outside of the object. There's a colour wash, pink wash stain on the material. Moving on now to the aluminium, that's going to be a light blue, so we're going for sort of contrasting pinkies and blues in this case. The darker sides are always towards the right hand side. We're assuming all the drawings we're doing that the light comes from the top left. So if we come to the sphere, for example, and it is going to be a sphere now, I'm going to put a little white dot at the corner and do a series of concentric circles and then C shapes, gradually getting darker towards the bottom right hand corner. If you think of roughly 7 minutes past 7, so the point in the clock hand between 7 minutes past there and 7 o'clock itself, those are going to be the darker sections. So those C shapes, I've moved to darker green, but gradually closing in C shapes towards that white dot, that reflective highlight on the upper left hand side of the sphere. That's giving an idea, maybe a little bit darker. Again, this is speeded up, but a little bit darker green may be required in that to reinforce the dark edge. So again, I'm just zooming in a little bit so you can see this. Unfortunately, it shows warts and alls when you zoom in a drawing, but you can get the idea of this quick sketch. There's that C shape happening, darkening, and maybe right round the outside edge, so we get that white bit really standing out now, but it's towards the right and the lower edges will build up that spherical object. Moving on, let's take another object now. Let's take this one at the bottom left hand corner. Now, it's a tall, unbalanced looking red stained object. It's got a contrasting colour for the fins sticking out the right hand side. Again, very, very speeded up. Half hole could be a tricky thing to get your head round, but quite a few teachers know the trick of having two pieces of material clamped together, drilling a hole and then separating the two materials. So you can actually get a half hole. In this case, just using the side of the tip of the pencil for the green, the contrasting green to red, opposite traffic light colours, and maybe a wee touch of that green, showing a shadow as if it's set some way back from the red object, so that fin sticking at the side of this more robust, thicker red object, and possibly the green material going right through, so you could possibly see it inside those holes or through those holes. In reality, they would be darker, but just to give the illustration of this, a wee touch of green inside there helps. Now that one there's holding a paintbrush. There's lots of things it could be holding. This one again, it will be greatly speeded up. We're putting the growth lines along, and we're going to have a slight curved top to this, so the top edge I will start to scoop to left and right. I very quickly put in those brown lines, fly in the orange and a touch of the yellow. I'm trying to give the idea of that top edge being a little bit more radius rather than just a flat side and a curved top. Being a curved join between the two. Possibly better to illustrate using a 3D drawing, but hopefully the 2D drawing here will give you a hint of the 3D form itself, a little bit of a shadow underneath that acrylic support. This one looks a little bit like a bollard. The idea of the growth rings on this side are coming up and then coming back on themselves. This is rather unusual. We'll see it more in the 3D stuff. If you have something that's been turned or it's got a hemispherical top and a cylindrical body, a bit like a bollard, you should be able to see that the growth lines going up actually come back on themselves. So this little scoop at the top here takes that growth ring round and back down again, back down again. There'll be an illustration of a 3D cylinder that'll show the same thing a little bit later on in another video. So in this case, the graduation of the colour heads towards the middle. So on the left hand side it goes to the right, and on the right hand side it goes to the left. We do a bit more to show the three-dimensional form on this. There'll be a little bit more tone, a little bit more shading required to give this idea of a cylinder and then a dome. Not quite as easy to do or straightforward to do as the sphere up above. Excuse me, yawns, that's terrible in a commentary. So going for a complementary colour from a slightly lighter colour, the same idea. You could do this with wood grain colours. I've just chosen to use three similar colours to build this one up. And then the grey. We're going to go for some darker purple on the edges to get the idea of a cylinder going around. Remember the right hand side of a cylinder being slightly darker than the left hand side as it rotates round, goes further away from the light source. Our light source is always on the top left hand side. And we're just firming in. Sometimes we have to get working in with the point of the tip of the pencil just to give the density of colour there. This is spinning around a few times. As always, it's best to turn the page, not to turn yourself, but occasionally if the camera's fixed, you'll see this page fly about. Contrasting yellow pencil going through. It's a cylinder, and we're going to try and give an idea of a little bit of shadows to the underside and inside that hole. This works reasonably well with this U-shaped shadow on the inside of that the hole on the pencil itself. So darkening the lower edge, and inside that hole, depending how far back the hole is inside the pencil is inside the hole, we'll get a U-shaped shadow in there. And again, that just gives a little hint more of the three-dimensional nature of that. A little bit grey on top, because if you try and press yellow to get a darker yellow, you get a brighter yellow. So one of the disadvantages of bright colours. So a little bit grey just to reinforce the idea of the darker shadow on the underside. There we go. Again, these are things you can practice, see how they work for yourself. The techniques I've been working on, the sketch grip you won't see because the sketches have already been done, but the outlining and the rendering grip with the three main grips, two of the three main grips you'll see here today. There's the outcome. A few more have been taken further on. By all means, you can stop at any point, go back and go over these things yourself. It is done fairly quickly, just so as you have a chance to have a visual reference. But we've taken this on a little bit, so you could have stopped at 10 minutes, or you can go for the full 19 if you want. What happens if the object hasn't got a grain? What happens if this is just green or blue? Well, this is a sort of maybe a turquoise colour going on here, but by increasing the density of the colour on the lower side, it's suggesting a curved bottom edge. Again, it's only 2D view, so we need more information to get detail, but a curving or rounding off or radius corner on the underside, and a shadow or a cast shadow from the underside of that fin that seems to be supporting it. All of a sudden that flat object starts to look a little bit more three-dimensional. It definitely starts to look more 3D. The rocket idea. Well, I'm not sure if it's a surfboard flat on the front with the curved edges, or if it's going to be a full-on rocket. So let me see. Let's just add a little bit light. Now the thing about colour, if you're going to add colour, start light and build up. It's difficult to get rid of density of colour or tone once you put it down. So in this case I'm going for the lighter colours we're going to choose, and this will get significantly darker as I build up the darker right hand side. Now it's starting to look a bit more rocket or bullet tip shaped, or rather formed. Bring in a little bit of warmer colour again, maybe a bit more red. No wood grain on this. This is just showing the idea of a three-dimensional form. Maybe a bit grey in here, and definitely an outline. Those little poles sticking out, they'll be aluminium because the way they're bent, would actually scoop the little cup shapes. So I've actually added that into the rocket shape. And giving an object an outline, it's a graphic technique. There are very few things in life have a black line around the outside of them, but it does make an object stand out. The Egyptians worked that out several thousand years ago with eyeliner, and apparently it's still popular these days. Internal hole also needs that outline. In reality, I should really go around the pencil as well. Sometimes, oops, wee mistake there, doubled the line up, but at the moment, let's just see if we can get an outline round about there, and think about those poles sticking out. Would those poles be flat or cylindrical? I think cylindrical. I think maybe I'll go for a bluey greeny colour to be a suggestion of an aluminium pole. But the round bits at the bottom, are they spheres or are they cylinders? Well, I'm going for a flat tone, slightly reflective, so there's little bands of white going through it. That suggests the end of a cylindrical bar heading in towards the page. So it's a round cylinder going into a round cylinder, two different diameters. Quite a few bits and pieces getting done now. Obviously just pop the pencil in. I'm just going for a fairly low contrast pencil, pop another yellow one in. If we can get the shadow in there, depending how it's going to sit, we might use a darker pencil again. Definitely the bottom edge. Now when you see these drawings up close, you can see they are fairly rough. The idea is to give an impression. You're not going for a camera ready artwork here. It's to give the impression of a three-dimensional object. You do see it warts and all, especially as it's filmed in a reasonably high resolution, and hopefully you can watch it on a reasonably sharp screen as we're going through these. But when you take the snapshot, when you see the end result, it does stand out, and that's the important bit at the moment. If you look up close on anything, even big billboard adverts, you can see the dots that make them up. So this one here, it looks like some sort of lemon slice with holes in it, and I'm not too sure how it's going to work, but there's two bits of bent acrylic sticking at the bottom. Looks like some holes going through. And a tea light, we tend to use these electronic ones now because of the anxiety of old school using real wax and aluminium tea lights. I'd like that to curve in a different way. I'd like it to curve close towards us in the middle and far away at the edges. I'm not too sure how to describe this, but I'm hopefully going to add a little bit more darkness to the right hand side. There's some pencils going through those holes. Excuse me. And there are shadows from the pencils coming down now. That was kind of rushed in the video, fast forward. And the cylinder for the light, Just giving a light blue on that. There might be other cylinders we can do while we're on it. Again, this is speeded up. Light blue on that one, side the tip of the pencil eventually. It's kind of small, so the tip of the pencil getting used a bit too much there. And this is the, well, one of the second drawings we did originally. Just giving the idea of a shiny cylinder. No desert cliche, no light earth colours, just blue. And that line there is suggestive of a reflective horizon. It is a false graphic technique because, technically speaking, most horizons are by their nature horizontal as opposed to that vertical one there. So, building up the tone towards the right hand side, the density, I think blue should be enough. Just put the same thing, this electric tea light, although I put an aluminium casing around the side of it for some reason. That was the original drawing. It was done on the previous video, and you can see the quality of the pencils. It's pretty good. It's not, they're exceedingly cheap, but you can still get a fairly good result. And if I wanted to change the material, let's just say I had a copper ring going around a lamp somewhere, I could maybe try some colours for another one. Bases, flat colour. I'm not suggesting these are curved in any way, so I'm just putting a flat colour, a rectangular object, this thin base. If I was to darken off one edge or the other, I could give the suggestion of something having a rounded base. Again, that one's just fairly straightforward, but if I did take one and darkened up, say the right hand side or the left hand side, remember the right hand sides tend to be darker because of the way the light's shining on these things, we could suggest a curve of some shape. We can't see a plan view at the moment, we can't see from above, so it's just suggested of a curved edge. This is where orthographic sketching, for example, can come in handy early first and second year. Right, so building that one up, I think maybe a candle to get done before we finish up. I did try some of these as full digital manual renders. Now that sounds like a contradiction in terms. That means taking a photograph of the manual drawing and using, in the case I've pinned on at the end here, it's a iPad with an Apple Pencil, using exactly the same techniques, and I'll produce a separate video to show the step-by-step on how this is built up. But you can see the same techniques, these same manual skills can be used in a digital environment. So for the cone, these lines, like the generators in a cone, tend to radiate down from the tip and fan out towards the bottom. A little bit of white left on, just a subtle blend to white, no stripiness involved in that. And possibly the right hand side, just getting a little bit more tone in there to reinforce the idea that, again, light from the left, shadow on the right. There we go, no flames on these, a couple of pencils missing in the drawings, maybe a touch of acrylic there just to identify as a material rather than just two lines. What else can we add just to finish off? Again, this is speeded up, so getting close to a minute or so off the finish. Let's just go for the copper in this, so copper, orange, maybe brown. Not too sure how much white will be left on this, but we're working, because it's so narrow, more with the tip of the pencil. But again, start with the light colour. Always start light and you can go darker. It's extremely difficult, not impossible, to make a colour lighter. So start with a lighter colour variant that you're going to work with. Let's just see maybe a bit brown on top of that to give the orange a bit more coppery feel to it. It could be a piece of piping, piece of tubing put in, and there's an insert for a candle of some sort sit inside it. These are very simple designs. The pun at the bottom have been made from holes and holding dings, so you're holding something. The designs we haven't really talked about, it's simply the rendering. So there's a fairly wide selection. We're going to have a look at some digital ones in the future, so a little snap to show you some of them in a minute or two, and then we'll move on to the next video. So please stop, pause, rewind, have a look, have a go. What we'll try and do is post some images of those unrendered drawings, so you can have a go at these ones if you want, or simply produce your own. These are all hand rendered using an Apple Pencil and iPad.